So in this video here, I'm gonna break down CPI this week, which was Wednesday. The CPI trade I took that yielded me a 10 to 1 RR. So let's just jump straight into it. The main topic that I really want to cover is time. Is time, well, the algorithm, but time and the anatomy of candles, because those were my two primary confluences for this was time and the anatomy of candles, right? So first things first, acknowledging where we are in terms of price as far as the algorithm being concerned. And the only thing that I took note of was that our price essentially kept making these pushes down, very unsustainable and efficient, right? And no major sweeps in doing so. And then just acknowledging how these CLTs were just stacking from your current daily high, your previous H1H, and then your current H1H was here. As far as from a liquidity standpoint, is one thing I noticed is that the CLTs, how the current weekly high essentially stacked sitting here, right? Previous H for H here, a previous H for here that this current daily high had just tipped above, right? And so essentially what I could see is that intention for me was building here. So before CPI news took place at 8:30, the main confluence for me at that point there became time and the anatomy of candles. Now the first thing I want to talk about is the anatomy of candles first, right? So from a daily perspective, what I was acknowledging is that the daily open was here, and that the body of the daily candle starts printing here, right? And the only CLT protecting the body of this daily candle was this current H for H, right? So essentially it's saying that, right, if I were to be anticipating this for CPI news coming at 8:30, if I were to be anticipating this this current this current H4H to maintain, right, which is the only COT protecting the body of this daily candle. Basically what I'm saying is that the last 30 minutes of the last 4 hours of London, I'm anticipating it to create a high within these parameters here, basically, right? Which were not to say that it was not feasible, but however, it just didn't really make sense for me. Is that if I were to be anticipating this to maintain, is that where exactly would I want to sell off of from here to essentially drive price lower, right? Also, this right here is the daily profile. Quick gem is that price tends to follow the wick, where the most wick is. So this was another confluence for me here, is this wick here. Right now, if we zoom out and we look from a higher time frame perspective, is that if we acknowledge where we are in terms of a weekly cycle, right? And we notice where we are in terms of a weekly cycle, right? So this here essentially being your weekly profile candle here, and the body of it is here, right? So now the only thing protecting the body of this weekly candle profile right before CPI news is this previous H1H, right? From an H4 perspective, from an H4, within this H4 cycle right here, sitting right below this previous H1H was this current H4 high, right? So for me, that was just adding more confluence as where the intention is building in the market. It's almost like price is like compressing itself. If you just acknowledge from a liquidity standpoint, all of this liquidity sitting here just compressing up until when price just explodes, right? So then for me, which really signifies the speed, is when you have CLTs just essentially stacking over top of each other, with no major sweeps. That's what actually creates the speed, in my opinion. Come news. So from the anatomy a candle standpoint, all of these CLTs that were essentially protecting the body of this daily candle per se and this weekly candle per se, for me, were intention. The market engineered liquidity for the market to essentially go higher. Now, from a time perspective, time was a major confluence for me. here, because what I noticed is right before I noticed that I was executing in this 4 hour cycle, so from 5 to 9 a.m. I knew that the current H4 was here, right? And we were in the last hour of this H4 candle, right? Therefore, if I were to be anticipating price to go higher from here, the only thing this H4 candle is doing in the last hour is essentially closing, right? Now, for where we were in terms of price, is that the algorithm essentially being oversold. My intention, acknowledging where the intention was building in the market here, acknowledging that we were in the last hour of this H4 segment, right? And from the start of this H4 segment, price had expanded down. So therefore, I was potentially buying the daily low and this H4 low. And it was the last hour, it was the last H4 segment of London. Therefore, I also know that it's time to essentially print London's low as well, right? So that was the confluence for me around time, is that with this being the last 30 minutes, if CPI news comes in at 8:30, that would essentially be the last 30 minutes of this H4 segment. So all price will be doing post mitigating my point of interest would just be closing, right? If the open is here, price just closed. Now, obviously, we shot up drastically. That was because the news per se, right? And then my point of interest was just I had this 5 minute here, and price dipped down into there, which and went here. And and the final TP was at the current weekly high. And as you see, price sweeps the current weekly high. Now the algorithm is now overbought, very unsustainable, very fast. So we peak out. And then obviously all this intention building down here, price rolls over. Even if we wanted to break this 1 hour segment down, if you want to see how fractal the market is and how oversold price is here, and we go and sweep the current here, we basically go and sweep, the current H4 low, and right here we inefficiently sweep the current daily low, right? But if we just acknowledge PA within this 1 hour, right, that starts at 8, right? So that means this current H1 low would be here. Current H1 low is here, and acknowledge how inefficiently price trades down and sweeps that. So a tighter point of interest could have been here. Our price trades down and sweeps that current H1 low down into going, but going into the last 30 minutes of this 4 hour segment, and you could have took for a little bit better, or you could have went here. But to say the least, that stop loss I had was beautiful. Off the 5 minute point a while. But if you wanted to, been like a 3 pip stop at 21 and 1 R would have been really nice, but hey, I'm not complaining about what I got. But from here, I wanted to just to show how fractal the market is. You can essentially see how the algorithm just squeezes right on this, and then we get down here in this last H1 segment, right? And this here, this is the same fractal play as the way liquidity was engineered here, right? Because you got your sweeps, your current H41, current H4 low, current daily low, very inefficient. And then your current H4H becomes the next CLT that actually ran the sell side liquidity here. So per my rules, this would be first target, right? Same thing here. You got your current H1 low here, price inefficiently trades down to sweep that, right? So then your current H1H becomes automatic first target. And then from a time perspective, again, like I say, the last hour the last hour of this 4-hour segment, the last hour of this 4-hour segment to essentially close like London's low is essentially closing in the open band here. So that pretty much wraps that buy up. Very, very straightforward. When you essentially just applying the algorithm, the art of timing, constant liquidity targets, and the anatomy of candles. The algorithm essentially acknowledging when price is overbought and oversold. Your constant liquidity target is essentially being able to see where intention is building in the market, or what I like to call engineer liquidity. The art of timing, understanding how time down here, how time down here on the x-axis and price here on the y-axis are forever interchangeable, right? So prices got to spend it somewhere. So when you apply that with price, is very powerful, and then just understanding the anatomy of candles, right? Where you are in terms of price and understanding candle profiles. So that'll wrap this video up.